So, as many of you know, Paldea Evolved is just around the corner, and people are talking a lot about it, and it's really cool, and the set's very good. I think it might be one of the best sets we've seen in a little while, so I'm really excited for this set, and many other people are. So, people have been like discussing what cards they think are good, and I've seen this, and if you haven't seen, I actually made a few days ago, I think, a video where I talked about the top 10 best cards in Paldea Evolved. But now I'm going to talk about the top 10 most underrated cards based on what I've heard from other people. So obviously a card will rank higher in this list and be considered more for this if people are generally saying it's not a very good card, when it generally has like power and it is pretty solid. Some of the cards higher on this list aren't the best cards, but really no one's talking about them. And then some of the cards that are lower on this list are actually pretty solid, but they are getting some talk about them, but they're just not looked at as the best cards. And generally, this does not overlap much with my other, with my top 10 list also. I tried to avoid that. But number 10 here, and by the way, the images are from Justin Basil's website, which you can find a link to that on my channel About page, I believe. And then also, some of them aren't like translated, so I've provided the translation for you. But anyway, Skeldirge EX here with massive 340 HP, an attack that heals, does 50 and heals 30, and Burning Voice here doing 270. For 2 fire, and it takes 10 and it does 10 less for each damage counter on this Pokemon. This is a very payable attack cost. You got massive HP, and you have the ability to tank and like heal and stuff. I feel like this of all the Stage 2 EXs coming in the next set, this very well may be the best. I think a lot of people know it's like a solid option, and it's gonna see some like play. I don't think it's an insanely good card, but I think it's a pretty solid one. And also has the potential to be quite strong, especially if Water type dies down just a bit more, because right now Water type is very good. Unfortunately, Water type will probably be very good in the next set, so for this card it won't be able to thrive as much. But I think Skeldirge EX here is a very solid Pokemon, and one that we should watch out for in the future, depending how the meta swings. But next up we have Chiyu EX, another Fire EX. And this time it's a basic EX with 190 HP, which for a basic EX isn't actually very much. It's not awful, but it's not great by any means. And then we see the first attack, Burning Envy, for 1 fire. You can build 2. This is essentially the same as Crabominable V's attack, which was probably a bit better because of its better typing as well as its higher HP. But still, this is a solid option and something that's a bit scary for your opponent, especially if we do see a fire-based mill deck, which we've seen a number of times. Chiyu EX would fit very naturally into that style of deck. Next up, we have the attack Flame Surge, which does 100 for 2 fire. You choose up to 3 of your bench Pokemon, and you can accelerate a basic fire energy from your deck to those Pokemon, which is very good. Honestly, Flame Surge is a very strong attack. The issue is that it's kind of hard to decide when you can use it. You can't generally use it turn 1 because it's 2 energy, but after turn 1, you generally have your attacker set up, so it's going to be a bit difficult to figure out when you want to use this. But I think it's a very amazingly powerful attack, and I think yes, this Pokemon's pretty solid if Fire type ever becomes good. Or I'd say if Fire gets good attackers, they're kind of expensive. I think Chiyu EX is a very solid option, so I'd love to see this card see play. It's a really unique and versatile one, and really no one's talking about it either. I don't think it's super strong, but I think it will. I think it will find a spot in the meta at some point during its time in standard format. Next up, we have Cetitan. This card actually I don't have a translation for, or a proxy translation, I suppose. But it's Cetitan, which is a stage 1 with 180 HP. The first attack's bad here, but the second for Water colorless. This Pokemon has a special energy attached to it. It essentially does 220 damage. Also, recently did a full set overview for Paldea Evolved, so you can check that out if you want to see me talk about all the cards. But Cetitan was one that stood out to me, as well as some other people. And it's a very solid one with reversal energy, which is probably, in my opinion, the best card in this set. But that's not. So spoilers, that's not showing up on this list because I think everyone knows it's a very good card. But yes, Cetitan is very solid, being able to hit 220 for 1 attachment on a stage 1. It's honestly one of the best users of reversal energy. That being said, it would be better if it was hitting for weakness. I think we're going to see a reversal energy weakness box, and I think Cetitan will fit very nicely into that deck. That being said, of course, it will start early on decks like Durvaludon and anything else that stops special energy. And also, it's like, you need to be behind on prizes. for Versal Energy to work, so it's not always going to be up, but I think this Cetitan's a very solid option in Zoroark-based toolbox decks with Versal Energy, which I think are pretty solid decks, and you can even put in some other things as well. Probably not, but this Cetitan is pretty good. Next up, we have Corviknight, a Stage 2 Metal Pokemon here. And this one is, I think, not being talked about at all. It's not the best card, but it's interesting to think about. And could see play in the current meta, I'd say. So its second attack here just does 200 and discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. Could be used with Reversal Energy. This is less damage than the Cetitan we just looked at. But it could hit her weakness from time to time. And Corviknight itself is also resistant to fighting. It's not the worst attacker we've seen by any means. It's not great, but it's not terrible. Then its first stack here, which does 50 for 1 metal, and if your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out by damage from this attack, so you KO them with this attack, prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon during your opponent's next turn. So if you grab a KO with this, it's invincible, and what really piqued my interest with it, first of all, it's very useful. You're just invincible. Of course, they can gust around it or something, but that's not always super easy to do. But also, you can pair it with damage buff, and even more importantly, it one-shots Comfey. Comfey, I believe, I'm pretty sure, is weak to metal, so this will one-shot it, and then you are invincible, and now your opponent's kind of struggling to deal with your Pokemon. I think this Corviknight could end up seeing some play. It's a bit weird, but it might see play even in control-based decks if you want to be able to buy yourself some time, beat Lost Spot. I think this Corviknight is like a very solid option. It's not amazing. This is definitely one of the weaker cards, but I think one that's been completely overlooked by everyone else. And I think it's one that should be a consideration, although it'll be a bit hard to pull off with this Stage 2. Next up, we have actually a supporter card here. I think this is the only trainer on this list. I'm not sure, but this one is a supporter that just says draw 2 cards, but if you have a Stadium card and play, draw 2 more. And this is honestly a very easy condition to meet, and main decks will not mind this at all. Just draw 4, and honestly, draw 4. Some people say it's overpowered. It's not. I don't know why people always say that. They use that to justify draw 3, but draw 4 is very solid. I think people are overlooking this card. It's getting some talk, but I think it's a very solid option in some decks if you're running lots of stadiums. And you could play 4 Falkner and say like 5 or 6 stadiums, which isn't that bad because we have access to cards like Artizone and Mesagoza, 2 supports that are very much setup-based, engine-based, 2 stadiums that are very much setup-based. So they will provide your engine while you're playing Falkner at the same time as your supporter. And drawing 4 is pretty solid, right? I think if you are able to use this every turn, you're in a pretty solid spot. Again, nothing crazy, but this is a card that's pretty solid. Next up, we have Weavile, and this is another one that hasn't been translated here, but it says once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from your bench to your active, you may essentially gust one of your opponent's benched basic up. So this is only basics, but it's still pretty solid, being pretty consistent gusting. That being said, of course, you probably will need a switch, or possibly even multiple switches, so it's awkward to use, certainly, but it's not bad by any means, I don't think. It has loose energy with the new Jet Energy card as well, which allows you to switch in the Pokemon you attach it to, and then you just retreat the Weavile. So I think Weavile's okay here. It's not my favorite Pokemon, but I think it has value, and I think it's a pretty strong Pokemon. Being relatively consistent gust, allowing you to possibly just KO 3 basic Pokemon EX or Pokemon Vs, and that's a very valid strategy. So I think Weavile here is going to see some play. Honestly, I could have possibly put this one a bit lower on the list, but again, I don't think anyone's really talking about this card, and I think this could see some very solid play. You could even put this in Zoroark-based control decks, or even Zoroark attacking decks. Probably not that, but you could definitely put in Zoroark control decks. I think Weavile is going to be a very solid card that's going to, I think, be worth considering to put into various decks in the future. Even if people probably won't end up putting it in, because, let's be honest, a lot of Pokemon players don't like being creative with decks. They just want to put the good old staple decks, which is fine. But I think Weavile is pretty solid. But again, of course, EXs, if they're not basics, their pre-evolutions are going to be single prizers, so you need to keep that in mind and realize that Weavile won't be as powerful against those decks in particular as well, which are picking up. Next up, we have Pelipper. This card is honestly super good. This is quite possibly the best card we're going to be looking at today. But again, people are talking about this card, so it's not all the way at the top. But I think it's quite good when you evolve into it. You either search a deck for supporter, and put into your hand, or you return your supporter from your disco pile into your hand. So this is quite useful because it allows you to play tons of one-of supporters and have a lot of access with Pelipper. There are a few issues within the current format. You don't have Scoop Up Net. Also, it has 120 HP, meaning it's not level wall searchable. And the only way to search it is with Ultra Ball. There are other ways, but really mostly Ultra Ball. So that's a bit unfortunate for Pelipper, but I think it will enable some really cool combos and stuff like that. So I think Pelipper will be very good. It does, of course, take up bench space as well because of that no Scoop Up Net thing. But I think Pelipper will be a very solid card and is very good. And a lot of people aren't thinking it's not going to be that good. I think this is it's not like a super robust engine because it only allows you to do like one thing per turn. You can only play one supporter. But I think it gives more diversity. Also, incidentally, the card's being hurt by Iono, which is really interesting because Iono is a very versatile supporter, and if you're playing lots of versatile supporters, there's no need for Pelipper to search them out because you can play Iono anytime. But I think Pelipper is still going to be very solid to search out cards like Roxanne or Judge or Vaihan or anything, Research, Boss's Orders, anything like that. So I think Pelipper is easily a very solid card, but I don't know how much play it'll see and how many copies you can fit into a deck because, as I said, it will be taking up bench space for you. Next up, we have Paldean Clodsire EX. I forgot to say EX. But yeah, Paldean Clodsire EX here with 280 HP as a stage 1. That's massive. That's one of the big things I like about it is that it is so big. Meaning that it won't be dying. It's not a vulnerability on the bench. And then its ability here is the reason why it's good. This attack's kind of useless, but once during your turn, if a stadium is in play, you may make your opponent's active poisoned. Poison just obviously adds more damage. We have a few combos with this. Notably, there's an Alolan Raticate from, I believe, Pokemon Go that's out that can essentially one-shot anything paired with this Paldean Clodsire EX. And then also there's some poison-based package with, I believe, Sableye and Viper, dealing pretty solid damage for poison, and this is the way to enable that. And honestly, in any deck, it kind of just adds 10 damage. So I think it's pretty solid. 10 damage, and you can use this every turn. You can use this to disrupt your opponent to encourage them to switch out. It's a big annoyance to have to deal with, and I think this card's very solid. I think it deserves to see play. I imagine it won't see a ton of play, but it is not a liability, which is one of the things I really love about it. Although it's high retreat cost makes it a bit of a liability, but it's not going to give up prizes easily. I think this card is very solid. Next up, we have another card that we don't have a translation for because people don't respect it as much, but this is a really interesting card. One that I think is on no one's radar. Maybe I'm underestimating players, though, when people are thinking about this card. But it is Gothitelle, which has an ability that says, first of all, its attack's kind of bad, but its ability says, once during your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck and choose one that put the card you choose on top of their deck and the other card on the bottom of their deck. This allows you to control your opponent's top deck. You may be thinking that's fine, but we've seen cards like this in the past, notably Orbital, and that wasn't very good. Orbital from Sword and Shield. Yeah, but in case you didn't know, Orbital Control in the next set, or in the with Paldea Evolve, is going to be super solid, I think. I think Gothitelle will be an amazing part of that deck because it allows you to control your opponent's top deck and just really restrict what they're able to do, especially pairing this with something like Roxanne. The attack does discard a random card from their hand as well, so you can pair this with something like Iono and then control their top deck very well. Honestly, I think this Gothitelle will be deserving of a very solid spot in this control-based deck. And you can honestly attack with Gothitelle, and it might even be solid. Who knows as an attacker? It's kind of questionable, but I think it's interesting, and I think this Gothitelle deserves to see some play and trying out in control-based decks, which will be very good in the upcoming set, by the way. Lastly, we have Veluza. This card is pretty crazy. And in my opinion, I originally completely dismissed this card. This is probably the card that inspired me to do the whole video. I haven't heard really any talk about this card, but it's really interesting. 130 HP on a basic isn't bad. It's not great, but it's respectable. And 120 damage for it says water, colorless, but it says if you have no cards in hand, this attack has only 1 water. So 120 for 1 energy on a basic with 130 HP. Those stats are like really insane. I think Veluza is very good. Of course, the big issue is like, what do I do with now that I have no cards in hand? The answer is, I imagine some of you will know this, but it's Radiant Venusaur, which allows after you attack to draw more cards. I'm actually going to it has to do with the idea of tempo as well, where you don't get ahead in prizes, but you're able to do damage, enabling cards like Iono and Defiance Band as well, where you are not taking prizes, but you're providing solid pressure. 120 isn't KOing lots of Pokemon, it is carrying a lot of basic single prizes, but it's not killing Vs, Vmaxes, EXs, so which is fine. You don't need to. You can also boost this with Defiance Band, as I said, as well as the Articunos, which do more damage. And I think this is very versatile because you can tech it in with Luminous Energy, and I think Luminous Energy is going to be a very good card as well. I think it's a little worse than Reversal Energy, but it's still very good. And I predict this Veluza is going to be absolutely insane. I mean, not insane, but good and very solid and viable. A strong contender in the format. Also, you could run this in Lost Box, but of course it has synergy with Barrel, as I said, Venusaur. And anything similar to that, anything that gives you consistent onboard draw. So I'm really excited for this Veluza, but I'm excited for a lot of these cards. I hope you enjoyed this video, though. In case you can't tell, I'm hyped for this new set. Also, there's a lot of weird stuff going on, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment down below what your favorite cards are from this set. What you think other people are overlooking, what I'm overlooking, because there are some good cards, and there's a lot to explore. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm just excited to see you next time. Also, if you enjoyed, I'd really love it if you subscribed. I'm trying to reach 400 subscribers by the end of the month. Is that going to happen? Probably not, but if it does, I'd be super happy. And I'm going to try to kick off my content, make it a little better in the coming weeks. So we'll see how that goes. But I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video. See ya.